Welcome to Living Well with Cancer, brought to you by the Cancer Resource Center of the Finger Lakes and the Giga Cancer Center. This evening's webinar is Honoring the Grief of Change, brought to you by Anja Schneider. So Anja, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, I'm just gonna introduce myself real quick. Yeah, my name is Anja Schneider. I moved from Germany to the US in 2020 after I had breast cancer in 2018. And yeah, so as the workshop today is about change, I think I've gone through a lot of big changes during my cancer journey. And one of the changes was I was working in the movie industry when I was living back in Germany, and this was a very stressful job, and I didn't take care of myself. And when I moved to the US, so after chemotherapy and all the therapies I had, and I moved, I thought I could just go back to normal. I was like, okay, brush it off. I go back to my old life. And the good thing about this was that I moved was that I didn't have a green card, so I wasn't able to work. So I had to pause for a year. And that year helped me so much to kind of deal with everything that had happened. And I changed careers. I did first I started a yoga teacher training with Daniela. That's how I met her. And then I did a meditation teacher training and a life coach certification. And now I'm helping others with the changes in life. So, and that's been wonderful for me. So I really, yeah, I kind of appreciate that that happened. And yeah, so today's workshop is about honoring the grief of change. And I'm pretty sure that, I mean, we all have changes all the time. Life is always changing. And if you like, you could put in the chat maybe 3 changes that you experienced in the last, let's say, half year. 3 major changes. And yeah, this workshop today, there's no right way to feel about it. And if something lands, that's great. If something doesn't, just let it go. And okay, yeah. So I see that you also had some big changes. And yeah, so today we're not going to talk about the grief that will appear when somebody dies. It's more the grief that appears when we have to deal with these changes. And in our normal life, we often don't even see that as grief, as or we maybe we don't feel allowed to grieve a change, like small change. So I just want to say that grief is healthy, instinctive, and a natural response to change, to both wanted change and unwanted change. So there can be grief for wanted change too. So you might be grieving a loss of health, change in your relationships, a change in your job world, and maybe sometimes just the life change that you now don't know what comes next. So I think for me it was a big change to that, like the change of friendships and relationships to other people. When I was diagnosed, that was so interesting that some people would just be by my side. Some people just completely left my life, and people came in that I hadn't talked to in 20 years, and all of a sudden they were there and were like, I'm gonna be here for you in your cancer journey. And I think that was one of the first changes I noticed. It's like, okay, that's very interesting, and it shows you a lot about the people in your life and yourself. I think this was one of those changes, and I grieved some ending of friendships. I would say the change of my job, like the that I wasn't able to do this job anymore, physically not able, and to deal with that, to like cope with the change within myself that I was not able, not the perfect worker that can do anything, everything, that works 16, 18 hours a day, no problem. To deal with that and to admit that I'm just not capable of this anymore. That was also, I think, a big thing I had to deal with, and it took me a while. It wasn't just from one day to the other. That's just some of, yeah, the changes that I experienced like immediately during this. Also, I think one of the changes is that when you're getting sick and there is you have to give over control to doctors. I think that's also one of the very big changes that you have to deal with when you're sitting there and people tell you what to do. And you have to trust them, and yeah. So, and grief can be felt in different parts of our body. So we can start with the physical layer. So when you get sick, there might be changes to your body. When you have surgery, you might have scars. There might be other things happening that are not, yeah, so you're not the usual normal anymore. Maybe you can't sleep anymore. There might be shifts in hormones, shifts in your energy, so you might be tired a lot, and all this um, is the body keeps that. The body remembers all these changes, and it might show up as exhaustion, as tightness or numbness. And you might feel the changes in when your shoulders are tensing up, or you might feel heavy. And sometimes it's good when you feel that heaviness or that tightness in your body that you start to let that move through you, that you kind of like do some practices like qigong or yoga or whatever feels good for you. It's good to move this and not let it keep stuck, so you can stretch. Maybe just walking outside can help. And of course, what also helps is resting, naps, and not overdoing it. And I have one very quick qigong practice that I really like to do when I have like when I don't feel right. If you are open to it, we can do that real quick. It goes very easy. So you just bring your hands to your sides and over your head. You breathe in, and then you bring the hands down and you make the sound of he. You can whisper that or make it loud and just do he. Let's do that again. He. And one more time. And it just helps to move things in your body, and it's very quick. There's also you can start breathing. You can bring your hands on your heart and just taking some deep breath into your belly. Really let your shoulders relax. And this is all about just honoring your body, honoring that it carries the grief, acknowledging that, and just be with it. And do you have any questions about the grief stored in the body?
No, but I will say that with what little Qigong I've done, it amazes me how effective it is. Like it doesn't require you to be limber and such, just like these simple re repeated movements and breathing. Like I was in awe of
Yeah,
what it provided me. So
yeah.
I love that you incorporated
Same.
that.
I had a very big surgery 2 years ago where was barely able to move, and I wanted to move, and I felt that I needed something so that my body wouldn't just completely shut off. And this is when I started the Qigong, and it was so beautiful to see you don't have to stand up. Like everybody can do Qigong, and it's so much more to connect the body and mind and just be in your body. And especially these repeating moves, I think, are so helpful to get out of your head and to really feel. So I can totally recommend Qigong. I really like it. Yeah, and speaking of the mind, grief also lives in the mind, and the mental layer of change can be confusing and overwhelming. And maybe you think, what if I had done something differently? Why is this happening to me? Or how is my future going to look like? And the mind also wants to solve grief like a problem, but grief is not a problem. Grief is just there. You can't solve it. And it's so hard because our mind is always like, let me fix this. It's so you might feel yourself in overthinking, in looping thoughts. You might even get anxiety, and so your mind is trying to protect you by making sense of things, but not everything can be understood, and we're not responsible for everything. So I want to share some ways to honor grief on the mental level. So you could, when you start getting these looping thoughts, you could journal and write down what is going on. And you can use prompts like what has changed in my life, or even what am I learning through this, if you're there. And you could also visualize to put your thoughts in a box and be like, okay, I'll come back to these later. Also, what can help with these looping thoughts is to schedule a worry time, how I say it. So you kind of say, okay, I am only worrying between 10 and 10:15 today, and set an alarm and say, okay, this is my time where I allow myself to go wild, and then get up and do something completely different. And it's always good to do something with your hands too, because then it's like you stop doing that, what you just did. And you could even make notes during your day and say, okay, this is a, when you notice that you start worrying, you can make a note and say, okay, I was worrying about, let's say, the scan. And then you write that down and you schedule that for your worry time. So you're like, okay, no, tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning between 10 and 10:15, I can think about that. Not right now. So that's just one other tip. And it's also it's yeah.
I've never thought about that, but I love the idea of it. Like, give yourself permission to just worry nonstop for a good 15 and remind myself, no, I don't have to do that right now. I'm going to do it tomorrow. I mean, it kind of sounds like a meditation where you can get distracted and start worrying, go, oh, wait, what am I doing? This is tomorrow's work, but I'm going to try that. And I love that you said um, that we want to fix grief. Like when we're grieving, we want to fix it. And we're like, for me, it's like, what remedy do I need to make this go away? And it's
Mm,
like, no, like grief is an invitation and I can participate or I can push it away and it will grieve me, right? But it's the automatic desire or thinking to like, how can I fix this and make it go away versus honoring it.
yeah. And
Mm.
the thing is when you push it away, it's gonna come back. It's always
Yeah, and probably at a really inconvenient time or, or less desirable time. How about that? But back to you.
yeah. Um yeah, and so when you notice these thoughts, when the first thing is always, okay, I notice that my mind goes to all these places, and you can start naming your thoughts and say, oh, this is worry, this is fear, whatever this thought is. So you can start distancing yourself from the thought. So you see it, it's there, and just imagine here's your thought and you are here. You can see it now. It's not taking over. You are in control and you can see it. I like to explain this like a TV show. When you're sitting in front of the TV and there are all these worries going on, it's like you watch a program that you don't want to watch. So if there's a program that you don't want to watch, you would turn the TV off or change the channel. And this is what you can do with your thoughts too. You can change the channel or turn it off. So that is just one other way to look at it. That helps me. And you can always ask yourself, what is true right now, which is also one thing that I use a lot when I feel anxiety or get nervous about scans or stuff like that. I'm always like, okay, what is real right now? Right now, we're sitting here, we're in this Zoom room. Nothing else is real right now. Everything is always in our head. So try to get back out of your head into the present moment. Be like, okay. So this is about the mind. Happy to take any questions for that too.
Do you have any strategies for uh, turning it off? Or is it more the one you're saying like to just just keep remind yourself you're going to do it tomorrow?
And you mean the TV to shut it off?
Yeah, yeah.
It's
That
it could be you focus on five things that you're seeing. Like you want to shut it off and you're looking around, you're like, okay. Or like, what am I hearing? What am I tasting? What am I smelling? This is just one thing. If you have an immediate need of getting out of this spiral, this could be something you can do. And also, there are different breathing practices that you can do. Like basically, focusing on your breath can always help because your breath and your body are always in the present moment. Qigong can help to bring you back in your body. Yeah, anything that makes you realize that this is in your mind and it's not real. It is all in your head and you doing that to yourself, by the way, basically, you know. Um, what else could we say?
I really love the what are five things that that I see, and four things that I hear, and three things that I smell, or
Yeah.
what and I remember I learned that during when the pandemic first started, when the lockdown first started.
Mhm.
And I was doing it. It was very stressful. And I learned that. And I was like, oh, that is really good. It's very distracting. It'll completely take me out of whatever I'm worrying about. I love
Yeah.
that one. I'm glad you reminded me of it.
So try to tell your mind that you don't need to figure everything out and that you're allowed to rest in the unknown and you still can be whole. And then we get to the next layer, and that's the emotional layer, which is the most tender and the most misunderstood because our culture doesn't always make space for the wide spectrum of emotions that come with change, especially in illness. Um, so there might be sadness, anger, fear, resentment, sometimes even maybe gratitude. There might be loneliness, and all that at the same time. Um, and this is very normal that we feel all the different feels. Emotional grief does not move in a straight line. And sometimes even positive change can carry grief. Like, for example, I remember that I finished my treatment, my chemotherapy, and I had a wonderful doctor's office where I got this treatment. And when it was over, there was this kind of yeah, I made it, it's over. And then I was thinking, no, I don't get to go back to these people anymore. They took care of me. They were great. It was like a safe container in this cancer journey where I knew I I, I could have cancer. You know, sometimes in other areas of my life, I wasn't allowed to have cancer, or people were weirded out because I had cancer. And this was the space where I really could be where where I was. So, and everybody else was there too, and everybody had their story, and it was I always had chemotherapy on Mondays. My husband always said, "You only have cancer on Mondays," because that was the day where I felt the worst. But I kind of, even though I didn't want to go there, I kind of liked to go there in this situation. And then when it was over, I was kind of like, I felt like now what am I doing now? I don't have these people anymore. I don't have this practice anymore. Now I'm going back to normal life. Where can I be who I am now in this whole process of change that happened during the therapy? So this was like a weird change for me. And yeah, so there are ways to honor emotional grief, and I think it's important to give yourself the permission to feel without needing to justify or explain. Um, I also don't think like a lot of people tell cancer patients, oh, just look at it in a positive way, and this trying to be positive about everything is just not working. I mean, it's kind of like, yeah, okay, and then they make you feel guilty if you're not positive about things. It's like, yeah, but I'm miserable. Let me be miserable. And it's so hard for people to be with someone that just feels the feelings. And this is why we're pushing it away, why we're trying to be positive for everybody else and for ourselves, and we're trying to be like, okay, yeah, I'm fine. And yeah, so for example, my this was also one of the things that I found fascinating when I had a mastectomy right very early on after my diagnosis, even before chemotherapy, and I was in the hospital and I was not well. Like physically, mentally, I was completely, this was the time where I completely broke down, kind of. I was crying for days and days, and people were, but when somebody came in, my friends, I was like, I'm okay. I'm fine. I'm trying to be positive. Hey, I'm still living. They found it early. All this stuff. And it wasn't good. And as soon as the door closed and people were out of the door, I was it was even more exhausting. I was completely like breaking down, and I cried for hours, and because I didn't, I couldn't deal with it. And, but I also didn't want other people to have to
Yes to
deal with my
yeah.
emotions.
Yes to all of that. Yeah, I also found myself missing the chemo nurses because it
Hmm.
was a place where I could just be myself, and it ties into not feeling comfortable being yourself around people who, because you see how uncomfortable they get. And so then you put on this persona. I would put on this persona to have them feel good. And finally, it was, just a treat to be able to speak to someone and tell them how it's actually feeling and have them they understand that it doesn't serve them or me to try to make me feel better. The people who know that to just meet me where I am and just be with me, like the nurses did during chemo, they
Right.
can't fix it. It means so much. And yeah, like him putting on, yeah, like putting the positive twist on things while in my mind I'm not feeling so positive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you just nailed that. You just like painted that beautifully.
Yeah. And this is the problem. We don't let our emotions, we don't allow ourselves our emotions because of the society, because of we think we should be grateful. This is also something that Daniela said when we talked about this. She said, grief comes before gratefulness. And I think that's a very powerful um, quote from her. I think that's
Yeah,
very true.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that being positive thing. People would tell me, well, remember, stay positive. And I tried them all. I tried it all on, right? Whatever I landed was, no, I'm going to be true to myself. And if my experience right now is one of heartbreak, I'm going to be heartbroken. And maybe I'll cry my eyes out. And in retrospect, I can see that what that provided me is that when I did see friends, I could be far more, I could experience joy and gratitude because I wasn't pretending all the time. When I was finally willing to be myself and say, the heck with all this, I'm just going to be me and allow me whatever I need, which is culturally frowned upon. You need to get back to work. You're being selfish because you're taking care of yourself. And when I could just be true to myself and allow myself to be and not resist who I was, it allowed for so much more what would be described as positive feelings. Yeah, I do not support be positive. I think that requires a lot of pretending, and that's exhausting. And I'm so glad you said that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is a big one for me too. And whenever I meet someone new, or somebody tells me about somebody that just got diagnosed, and then you hear the people talk and like, oh, I told them they should be positive because like, mm. It's- What is there to be positive about? Yeah, you're still living. Okay.
And go
Yeah.
through the grief first, right? Go for the grief, then the gratitude. Great quote.
And what I think what you just said is so powerful too, because you said that you could feel more joy when you let yourself grieve.
Yeah.
So you really experienced the emotions and you didn't just push them away, because when you push them away, you can't really have the highs anymore either.
Yeah. Powerful experience.
Yeah. So yeah, it can help when you notice your emotional grief, it can help to name your emotions. So you could say this is sadness, this is fear. And when we name the emotions, it can help our nervous system to regulate, because it notices what it is, it gets a name, and it's kind of maybe also a little bit like what I said about the TV screen. It kind of detaches you a little bit. You see that it is happening, and you see, but I'm still here. I'm with myself. And yeah, you can express yourself when you're creative. You could do art projects and put it all out there, or you can listen to music. Something that always helps. Or prayer can help. Um, I think that's also one thing that Daniela taught me that I really like, is to make a list. If you like music, to make a playlist and about songs that are moving you, and then put them on. And when you're by yourself, you just put three songs on and you just dance to it and you just let it all out. You let it move through your body. You can cry, you can do whatever it takes to kind of get it out of your body and let it move through you. And also what can help is when you let someone witness your emotions, um, and you don't carry it alone. That's yeah. So exactly, when you allow your emotions to flow, they move through you like weather. They rise, they peak, and eventually they soften. Um, so we can talk now what can help you return to a place of honoring your grief. And you don't need complex tools to process grief. What can help is consistency, rituals, and kindness. So there's some simple daily practices. You can ask yourself each morning, what part of me needs the most kindness today? You can do a physical, emotional reset, as I already talked about, like a Qigong movement, and sometimes just a sigh can really help when you just like and just let it out for a moment. Um, and you can also, for example, practice to do 3 breaths before you have an appointment or anything that worries you. You can just come to your breath or do this he practice, for example. Um, yeah, these are things that you can do daily if grief comes up. And then some other tips that could be weekly or monthly rituals would be, for example, to create a grief altar or a shelf with objects, pictures, or notes that represent the change. It can be memories. You can also, for example, write a letter to the version of yourself that is changing, or a letter to your body that's trying its best, and honor your body. And you can also reflect every end of the week, what has changed this week? What am I letting go of? And yeah, you can consider joining a support circle or a spiritual group where grief is allowed and honored. And yeah, don't think that grief will stop at some point just by itself. It's always kind of gonna be there, and it is also changing all the time. Um, yeah, are there any questions to that?
No, just what comes up for me is just more just agreement and affirmation of what you've been saying. There was something that I really like that you said, and it has slipped my mind. But, but yeah, grief is always present, right? Grief is I've said, I tossed it around many ways, just in different teachers speak about it, but it's like uh Martine Prechtel says, that, if you're truly present to what you love, you will feel grief because you know that you will lose that, or that person may lose you, right? It's like, so
Hmm.
grief is present with love. And it's helpful to know that, because sometimes I can't tell, if I'm feeling grief or love for, the person that the grief is about. And it's like it's a powerful expression of love. And I like to remind myself of that, when the grief gets heavy, just like, this is love. This is love that I'm expressing.
Hmm.
Yeah. That's all. Thanks.
And yeah, as we close, I want to offer you a reminder, and that is you don't have to grieve right. You don't have to get through it quickly, and you only have to be kind to yourself in it. And as you just said, grief is a companion of love. It's not a sign that you're broken, it's a sign that you've experienced something meaningful. And I think the whole thing about change, and to accept change and to be with change and to grieve change, is also that it takes so much more energy to fight it. When you're like, the changes that happen and you start to go with them and you allow yourself to grieve with them, it's easier than to always think, I want it differently. Because fighting takes so much of our energy that sometimes it's easier to accept the change. If you can change what happens, it's easier to accept it. And then and grieve what you had to let go. And yeah, let's maybe take a moment together, put your hands back on your heart and take a deep breath. Take a slow inhale, let the breath go. And just, you can whisper or say it out loud. Even in this, I honor what is changing. Even in this, I honor what is changing. You are allowed to grieve. You are allowed to rest. And you are allowed to be held in all the unknowns. And thank you for being here. And thank you for honoring your own story. And thank you for honoring all the ways that your story is changing.
Thank you so much, Anja.